Welcome to my channel, a list that brings your story about the love of a mafia boss. Now let's listen.
The crystal water glass trembled in my hand as I approached table 17. The droplets sliding down its surface caught the amber light of the restaurant's chandeliers, creating patterns that reminded me of tears or blood. My worn sneakers made no sound against the polished marble floor of Luminara, the kind of place where a single appetizer cost more than my weekly rent. The kind of place where girls like me were supposed to be invisible. I'd been working here for 3 months, long enough to recognize the regulars, the tech billionaires who treated their dates like business acquisitions, the politicians who spoke in careful whispers, the old money families who'd been dining here since before I was born. But the man at table 17 was different. He'd arrived 15 minutes ago, and the entire atmosphere had shifted. The maitre d' had straightened his spine so fast I thought it might snap. Our manager, Mr. Castellano, a man who once made a senator wait, had personally escorted him to the corner booth. Even the kitchen had gone quiet for a moment, and that never happened. I hadn't been assigned to his section. Table 17 belonged to Maria, our most experienced server, the one who knew how to handle the difficult ones. But Maria had grabbed my arm in the kitchen, her fingers digging into my flesh with desperate strength. "Please, Sophia, switch with me. Just this once." Her face had been pale, almost gray. Maria never asked for favors. Maria never showed fear. "Who is he?" I'd whispered. But she'd already disappeared into the storage room, and I'd been left holding the water pitcher with my heart hammering against my ribs. Now, as I moved closer, I could see him properly. He sat with his back to the corner wall. Of course he did, where he could watch both entrances. 2 men flanked the booth at a respectful distance, their suits cut to conceal but not quite hide the bulk of weapons underneath. They didn't look at me as I approached. They looked through me, their eyes scanning the restaurant in constant motion. But he looked at me, dark eyes, almost black in the low light, lifted from the menu to my face. The impact of that gaze hit me like a physical force. I'd waited on powerful men before, but this was different. This was a man who could decide whether you lived or died before his coffee got cold, and you'd never see it coming. "Good evening." My voice came out steadier than I expected. The corporate smile I'd perfected stretched across my face like a mask. "My name is Sophia, and I'll be... Where's Maria?" His voice was quiet, dangerously quiet, the kind of quiet that made you lean in to hear, that made you vulnerable. It had a faint accent, something Mediterranean that turned the R in Maria's name into something almost sensual. She wasn't feeling well. "I'll be taking care of your table tonight." The lie slipped out smoothly. I'd gotten good at lying. 2 jobs, student loans I'd never pay off, and a mother in a care facility I couldn't afford. You learn to smile and lie and pretend everything was fine. He studied me for a long moment. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, probably worth more than my car. A watch glinted at his wrist. Patek Philippe, if I had to guess, the kind you pass down through generations. But it was his hands that caught my attention. Scarred knuckles. A thin white line across his left thumb. Hands that had done violence but held the menu with surprising delicacy. "Sophia." He said my name like he was tasting it. Unusual name for someone working here. "You don't look like you belong." I didn't know if that was an insult or an observation. "Can I start you with something to drink?" "Macallan." "Neat." The 26, if Castellano still has it in the back. Of course he'd know what was in our private collection. Of course he'd order something that cost $800 a pour. I nodded and turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "The water." I'd almost forgotten I was still holding it. My hands had gone numb. I set the glass down on his table, and that's when I saw it. The folded napkin tucked under the breadbasket, the corner sticking out just slightly, deliberate. And on it, in Maria's handwriting, I recognized the looping M she always drew. A message. "The deal is a trap. You're the one they want." My blood turned to ice. The man was looking at his phone, scrolling through something with casual disinterest. He hadn't seen it. Neither had his guards. But Maria had known. Somehow Maria had known he'd be here, had known something terrible was planned, and she'd left this warning like a bomb under his breadbasket, and now I had to decide what to do with it. Every instinct screamed at me to walk away. This wasn't my problem. I was nobody. A 26-year-old waitress with a philosophy degree I'd never use, and a life that was falling apart one day at a time. Whatever world this man inhabited, with his dangerous eyes and his armed shadows, it had nothing to do with me. But then I thought of Maria's face, the terror in her eyes. If I walked away and something happened to him, something violent, something bloody, could I live with that? My hand moved before my brain could stop it. As I reached across to adjust the breadbasket, a completely normal gesture, the kind waitresses made 1,000 times a shift, I palmed the napkin. The paper felt like fire against my skin. I pressed it against my palm and turned it over, so the message faced down against the white tablecloth, directly in front of him. "I'll get your drink," I murmured. His eyes lifted to mine. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd seen everything, that he knew, that those dark eyes could read my guilt like a book. Then he nodded, dismissing me. I walked toward the bar on legs that felt like water. My heart was trying to break through my chest. What had I just done? What the hell had I just done? Behind me, I heard the soft rustle of paper. I didn't look back. Couldn't look back. I reached the bar and leaned against it, trying to remember how to breathe. "You okay?" James, our bartender, was already pouring the Macallan. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine." Another lie. I was getting so good at those. The amber liquid caught the light as James handed me the glass. I carried it back on autopilot, my body moving through the familiar motions while my mind raced. He was reading the napkin when I returned. His face revealed nothing. No surprise, no fear, no anger. He simply read Maria's warning with the same expression he might give a wine list. Then, with deliberate care, he folded the napkin and slipped it into his jacket pocket. When I set down his drink, his fingers brushed mine. The contact lasted only a second, but I felt it everywhere. A spark, a burn, a warning. "Thank you, Sophia." His voice was still quiet, but something had changed in it. A new weight, a new awareness. "What time do you finish tonight?" Midnight. Why?" "You'll wait for me. In the back parking lot." It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a command. It was simply a statement of fact, delivered with the absolute certainty of a man who'd never been refused. "I don't think you'll wait." His eyes held mine, and I saw something flicker in their depths. Not anger. Something worse. Interest. "Because if you don't, I'll assume you're part of whatever trap has been set for me, and I don't treat traitors kindly." The threat landed like a knife between my ribs. Before I could respond, before I could process the implications of what he'd just said, 3 men entered the restaurant. They were dressed well enough, expensive suits, polished shoes, but they wore them like costumes, like wolves in sheep's clothing. And the way they moved, spreading out to cover different angles of the room, made my stomach drop. The man at table 17 saw them too. His entire body language changed, becoming absolutely still in the way predators go still before they strike. Sophia. My name was a whisper, but it cut through the ambient noise like a blade. "Walk away. Now. And when this is over, you run. You get in your car and you drive, and you don't stop until you're sure no one's following you. What's happening? Now!" The command cracked like a whip. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my tray. The 3 men were moving toward table 17 with purpose. Other diners were beginning to notice. Conversations faltering. Tension spreading through the room like poison in water. I should have run to the kitchen, should have hidden, should have done anything except what I did. Instead, I stepped between them and him. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way he'd looked at me, like I was real, like I mattered. Maybe it was Maria's fear, still haunting me. Maybe I was just tired of being invisible, of being powerless, of watching bad things happen and doing nothing. "Sir?" I addressed the lead man, my server voice bright and false. "Do you have a reservation? Let me check with the host." He pushed past me like I was furniture. His hand went inside his jacket. Everything happened so fast. One of the guards moved, a blur of motion. The man's hand came out holding a gun. Someone screamed. The guard fired first, a sound like thunder in the enclosed space, followed by the musical shattering of crystal as a chandelier exploded overhead. I hit the floor hard, my palms skidding across broken glass. Pain registered somewhere distant, secondary to the chaos erupting around me. More gunfire, more screams. The acrid smell of gunpowder mixing with expensive perfume and fear. And then, silence. Not complete silence. The ringing in my ears wouldn't allow that. But the shooting had stopped. I lifted my head, tasting blood where I'd bitten my tongue. All 3 men were down. The restaurant looked like a war zone. Tables overturned, glass everywhere, paintings hanging crooked on the walls. Other patrons were huddled under tables, crying, praying. But the man from table 17 stood untouched in the center of the carnage. Not even his suit was wrinkled. His guards flanked him, weapons still drawn, scanning for more threats. His eyes found me on the floor, bleeding and shaking. He walked over, his expensive shoes crunching on broken crystal. Then he crouched down, bringing his face level with mine. Up close, I could see every detail. The faint scar through his left eyebrow, the way his jaw was shadowed with stubble, the complete absence of mercy in his expression. "You just saved my life," he said softly. "Whether you meant to or not." That message gave me the 3 seconds I needed to prepare. I didn't. Which means, Sophia. His hand came up and I flinched, but he only brushed a piece of glass from my hair with unexpected gentleness. "Now you're mine. Because I protect what's mine, and I own what saves me. Do you understand?" I didn't understand anything. My world had just exploded into violence and blood and impossible choices. In the distance, sirens wailed. He stood, turning to his guards. "Clean this up. I'll handle the girl." Before I could protest, before I could even think, one of the guards had lifted me off the floor. My bleeding hands left crimson streaks on his white shirt, but he didn't seem to notice or care. The last thing I saw before they carried me out the back entrance was Mr. Castellano emerging from his office, his face carefully blank. He'd known. Everyone had known except me. I'd just walked into a trap meant for a Mafia boss, and somehow, impossibly, I'd become the thing he wanted to keep. The car smelled like leather and gun oil. I sat in the back of a black SUV with windows tinted so dark I couldn't see out, my hands wrapped in someone's expensive handkerchief that was rapidly turning red. The vehicle moved through the city with smooth precision, taking turns I couldn't track, heading somewhere I didn't know. Every instinct told me to scream, to fight, to throw myself out the door. But the man sitting beside me radiated such absolute control that my body had frozen in survival mode. He hadn't spoken since we'd left Luminera. Just made a phone call in a language I didn't recognize. Italian, maybe, or Sicilian. His voice low and clipped, giving orders, arranging things, while I bled onto his pristine interior and tried not to hyperventilate. "Where are you taking me?" My voice cracked on the words. He ended the call and turned those dark eyes on me, somewhere safe. "I want to go home." "Your home isn't safe anymore." He said it like he was commenting on the weather. "The men who came for me tonight, they weren't working alone. Someone set this up, which means someone knew where I'd be. And you," he reached over, and I couldn't stop myself from flinching. His jaw tightened, but he only took my injured hand, unwrapping the soaked handkerchief with careful precision. "You interfered. You warned me. That makes you a witness, a liability, or an asset, depending on how intelligent you are." The cloth came away, revealing deep cuts across my palms, embedded with tiny crystal fragments that glittered like diamonds in the dim light. He examined the damage with a clinical detachment that somehow felt more intimate than kindness would have. "What's your full name?" "Sophia. Sophia Chen." "Family?" "My mother. She's in a care facility. Early onset Alzheimer's." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "She doesn't always remember me anymore, but she's all I have. And if something happens to me, there's no one to pay." "Address of the facility," I told him. What choice did I have? He made another call, rattling off the information in English this time. 24-hour security detail, best staff available, whatever she needs, and make sure the bills are handled, all of them, going back to the beginning. Yes, tonight. I don't care what it costs. My brain struggled to process what I was hearing. Why would you? Because you're mine now, Sophia. And I take care of what's mine. He said it with the same certainty he'd said everything else, like he was explaining a fundamental law of the universe. Your mother will have the best care available. You'll never worry about her again. In exchange, you'll do exactly what I tell you, when I tell you. Starting with being smart enough to survive the next 48 hours. The SUV pulled into an underground garage, concrete and shadows, and the echo of our tires. We descended what felt like several levels before stopping in a private section where two more identical vehicles waited. The driver, a thick-necked man with Slavic features, came around to open the door. The man from the restaurant emerged first, then turned and extended his hand to me, a gentleman's gesture that felt absurd given the circumstances. I stared at that outstretched hand, at the scarred knuckles and the glint of a silver ring bearing some kind of crest. I don't even know your name, I whispered. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. Dante. Dante Salvatore. He said it like I should recognize it. Like it should mean something. It didn't. I was a waitress from Queens who'd spent her whole life trying to be invisible. The underworld of organized crime might as well have been another planet. I took his hand. His grip was warm, steady, completely confident. He pulled me from the car with surprising gentleness, though I noticed he kept himself between me and the open space, his body a shield. This way. We walked through a door that required both a keycard and a fingerprint scan. The hallway beyond was pristine white, clinical, with that particular silence that came from expensive soundproofing. Medical equipment lined one wall. My stomach dropped. I'm not hurt that badly. You have glass embedded in your hands that needs to be removed before infection sets in. You're also in shock even if you don't feel it yet. He guided me into a room that looked like a private doctor's office, complete with an examination table and enough medical supplies to stock a small hospital. Sit. I sat. Mostly because my legs were shaking too hard to hold me up anymore. A woman entered. 50s, steel gray hair, the efficient demeanor of someone who'd seen everything and been surprised by none of it. She took one look at my hands and tisked. On the table, girl. This is going to hurt. It did hurt. She worked with swift competence, plucking out fragments of crystal with tweezers, while I bit my lip hard enough to taste blood. Dante watched from where he leaned against the wall, his expression unreadable. You said someone set you up, I managed, needing to focus on anything but the pain. Who? That's what I intend to find out. His voice had gone cold. I was supposed to meet with the Kozlov brothers tonight, a deal that would have expanded my operations into their territory. Something I've been negotiating for 6 months. Instead, they sent assassins. The Kozlov brothers sent those men? No. Someone wanted me to think that. The men who attacked were professionals, but sloppy. They wanted witnesses. They wanted chaos. They wanted to start a war between my family and the Kozlov organization. His eyes narrowed. Someone very clever is playing a very dangerous game. The doctor finished with my left hand and moved to the right. I hissed as tweezers dug into my palm. Why tell me this? I asked through gritted teeth. I'm nobody. I'm just... You're the girl who saved my life tonight. Dante pushed off the wall and came closer, his presence filling the small room like smoke. Which means you're now caught in the middle of a war you don't understand. Every enemy I have will want to know what you know. Some will try to buy that information. Some will try to torture it out of you. Some will simply kill you to send me a message. Terror, cold and absolute, washed over me. Then let me go. I'll disappear. I'll leave the city. I won't tell anyone anything, I swear. Too late. He crouched down so we were eye level, and I could see the truth in his face. The moment you passed me that napkin, you chose a side, whether you understood what you were doing or not. Now your only chance of survival is to stay under my protection. This is insane. I can't be part of this world. I have a degree in philosophy, for God's sake. I wait tables. I read Kierkegaard. I'm not. You're also intelligent enough to recognize a trap when you see one, and brave enough, or stupid enough, to step between me and armed men. Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. Most people in my organization wouldn't have done what you did tonight. They would have saved themselves. The doctor wrapped my hands in clean bandages, securing them with careful precision. Done. Change these twice a day. No heavy lifting for at least a week. She looked at Dante. She needs rest. And food. When's the last time you ate, girl? I couldn't remember. Breakfast, maybe? The restaurant had been too busy for a dinner break. I'll have something sent up. Dante straightened, then offered his hand again. This was apparently going to be a pattern. Come. I'll show you where you'll be staying. Staying? I let him help me off the table, my bandaged hands clumsy and useless. For how long? Until I've eliminated the threat, or until I've decided what to do with you. The casual way he said it made my blood run cold, but I followed him because what else could I do? I was trapped in an underground facility with a Mafia boss who thought he owned me. And somewhere above us, the night was full of people who wanted me dead. We took an elevator up 2 floors. The doors opened onto a hallway that looked nothing like the clinical white below. Here, everything was rich and warm. Hardwood floors, art on the walls that might have been real, crown molding that spoke of old money and older power. Dante stopped at a door and pressed his palm to another scanner. This will be programmed for you tomorrow. Tonight, you stay inside, unless I send for you. The room beyond was bigger than my entire apartment. A king-size bed dominated one wall, dressed in silver silk that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed a view of the city skyline. We were high up, much higher than the garage had been. A door led to a bathroom that looked like something from a luxury hotel. There are clothes in the closet, Dante said. They should fit. Toiletries in the bathroom. If you need anything else, use the phone on the nightstand. Press 1. I stood in the middle of this impossible luxury, my bloody uniform and bandaged hands a jarring contrast to the elegance surrounding me. This is a cage. A gilded cage, but still a cage. Yes. He didn't try to deny it. But it's a cage that will keep you alive. And in my world, Sophia, that's all that matters. He moved toward the door, then paused. Get some rest. Tomorrow you'll tell me everything you know about tonight. Everything Maria said to you, everything you saw, every detail, no matter how small. And then? And then we'll see if you're smart enough to survive what comes next. He left, and I heard the lock engage with a soft click that sounded like a prison door closing. I stood there for a long time, my mind spinning. 24 hours ago, my biggest problems had been making rent and remembering to call my mother's care facility. Now I was locked in a penthouse prison, my hands wrapped in bandages, my life caught in the crossfire of a war I didn't understand. The phone on the nightstand rang, making me jump. I picked it up with clumsy bandaged hands. Miss Chen? A woman's voice, professional and polite. Your dinner is ready. May I bring it up? Yes, thank you. 5 minutes later, a woman in a crisp uniform wheeled in a cart loaded with enough food for 3 people. She set everything on the small dining table by the window. Pasta in cream sauce, grilled vegetables, fresh bread, a carafe of red wine. Mr. Salvatore wanted to ensure you had options, she said, her expression carefully neutral. If there's anything else you require, just call down. She left, and I was alone again with too much food and too many thoughts. I tried to eat, but everything tasted like ashes. My hands throbbed despite the painkillers the doctor had given me. Outside the windows, the city glittered like broken glass, beautiful and dangerous and completely indifferent to my suffering. I thought about Dante's words, "You're mine now." What did that mean? Was I a prisoner? A pet? A possession? The way he'd looked at me, like I was something valuable that he'd decided to keep, had been more terrifying than the guns. My phone was still in my purse, somehow miraculously intact. I dug it out with clumsy fingers and called the care facility, my heart in my throat. Rosewood Senior Care. How may I help you? Hi, this is Sophia Chen. I'm calling about my mother, Helen Chen. Is she? Oh, Miss Chen! The receptionist's voice brightened. We were just about to call you. You'll be so pleased. There's been a change in your mother's care plan. A benefactor has arranged for her to be moved to our premium wing, with around-the-clock specialized nursing. The arrangements are being finalized as we speak. My throat closed. A benefactor. Yes, isn't it wonderful? And all her bills have been paid in full, including the arrears. It's truly a blessing. I hung up without responding, my hands shaking. He'd done it. Within an hour of learning about my mother, Dante Salvatore had reached out his powerful hand and changed her life with a phone call, a gift, or a chain. Probably both. I walked to the windows, pressing my bandaged palms against the cold glass. Somewhere in this city was a man who thought he owned me. Somewhere were people who wanted me dead. And somewhere was Maria, who'd started all of this with a folded napkin and a warning. The deal is a trap. You're the one they want. But the trap had failed. The Mafia boss had survived. And now I was caught in the aftermath, swept up in currents I couldn't see or understand. The city lights blurred as tears finally came. I'd spent my whole life trying to stay invisible, to stay safe, to build a small, manageable existence that wouldn't hurt too much when it inevitably fell apart. Instead, I'd become visible to the most dangerous man I'd ever met, and he'd decided to keep me. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I didn't recognize, and a moment of pure panic before memory crashed back. The penthouse, the Mafia boss, the blood and broken crystal. My hands ached beneath their bandages, a dull, persistent throb that served as proof this nightmare was real. The clock on the nightstand read 9:47 a.m. I'd slept in the clothes I'd found in the closet last night, soft cotton pajamas that fit perfectly, which somehow made everything worse. He'd known my size, had planned for this, had prepared a cage for a bird he hadn't even caught yet. A soft knock at the door made me freeze. Miss Chen? The same woman from last night. Mr. Salvatore requests your presence for breakfast. I've brought fresh bandages and clothes. I wanted to refuse. Wanted to scream that I wasn't his pet, wasn't his possession, wasn't going to play along with whatever game this was. But my mother's face floated through my mind. The premium care wing, the specialized nurses, the bills paid in full. Give me 15 minutes. The woman entered with the efficiency of someone who'd done this many times before. She changed my bandages with practiced hands, the cuts looking better than I'd expected. No signs of infection, already beginning to heal. Then she laid out clothes on the bed, designer jeans that probably cost more than my monthly salary, a silk blouse in deep emerald, underwear still in packaging. How did he... I started, but she was already leaving, her face professionally blank. I dressed slowly, my bandaged hands making everything difficult. The clothes fit like they'd been made for me. The blouse brought out the green in my hazel eyes, and the jeans hugged curves I usually hid under baggy uniforms. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. She looked expensive. Kept. Owned. The door unlocked with a soft beep, and a man in a dark suit waited in the hallway. Not Dante, one of the guards from last night, his face expressionless. This way, Miss Chen. We walked through corridors that grew increasingly opulent, past rooms I caught glimpses of. Libraries, offices, what looked like a private gym. This wasn't just a penthouse. It was an empire, hidden in plain sight above the city. The guard opened a door onto a terrace that stole my breath. The space wrapped around this level of the building, offering panoramic views of Manhattan. Morning sun glinted off glass towers. In the distance, I could see the glitter of the East River. And in the center of it all, at a table set for two, sat Dante Salvatore. He'd traded last night's suit for more casual clothes, dark slacks and a white shirt, with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with scars and what looked like the edge of a tattoo. He was reading something on a tablet, a cup of espresso at his elbow, and he looked almost normal. If you ignored the guards stationed at each corner of the terrace, and the gun I could see in a shoulder holster when he shifted. He looked up as I approached, and those dark eyes tracked over me with an intensity that made my skin burn. Sit. He gestured to the chair across from him. I hope you slept well. I sat because my legs were shaking. I was locked in a room in a stranger's penthouse after watching people get shot. How do you think I slept? Something that might have been amusement crossed his face. Most people are too frightened to show anger in my presence. It's refreshing. A woman appeared with coffee and began serving breakfast. fresh fruit, pastries, eggs Benedict that smelled divine despite my churning stomach. She poured my coffee exactly as I liked it. Light. 2 sugars. I hadn't told anyone how I took my coffee. You had me investigated. It wasn't a question. Of course. Dante set down his tablet. Sophia Marie Chen, 26 years old, philosophy degree from Columbia, graduated summa cum laude 4 years ago, student loans totaling $83,000, working 2 jobs, Luminara and a bookstore in the village, mother in Rosewood Senior Care with early onset Alzheimer's, bills 6 months past due before last night. No father listed on your birth certificate. No siblings. No romantic relationships in the past 14 months. You read Kierkegaard, Sartre, and Camus. You volunteer at a literacy center on Sundays when you can. You've never been arrested. Never even had a parking ticket. He picked up his espresso. You're exceptionally ordinary, Sophia. Which makes what you did last night extraordinarily interesting. The casual invasion of my privacy should have terrified me. Instead, I felt angry. You forgot that I like old movies and I'm allergic to shellfish. Want to know my blood type too? O negative. Universal donor. Very useful. He smiled, and it was the most dangerous thing I'd ever seen. Warm and cold at the same time, like fire on ice. I like you, Sophia Chen. You have spirit. That will either save you or get you killed. Why am I here? I pushed the words out. What do you want from me? Information. Then a decision. He set down his cup and leaned back, studying me. Tell me about Maria. Everything she said last night, every detail. I wrapped my hands around my coffee mug, the warmth grounding me. She asked me to switch tables with her. Said she wasn't feeling well, but she was terrified. I could see it in her face. Had she ever asked you to switch before? Never. Maria doesn't ask for favors. She's worked at Luminara for 12 years. She's untouchable. Perfect. How long before I arrived did she approach you? I thought back, trying to focus through the fog of memory. Maybe 10 minutes. She came out of the back office area. I remember thinking it was strange because she'd been on the floor all night. Dante's expression darkened. The office. Did you see her with anyone? No, but... I paused, something clicking. Mr. Castellano came out right after her. He looked satisfied, like something had gone according to plan. Castellano. Dante said the name like a curse. He's been on my payroll for 3 years, or so I thought. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. What else? She left the napkin under your breadbasket. The message was in her handwriting. I recognized it. She must have written it before I got there, must have known you were coming, which means someone told her, someone who knew about my reservation, knew I'd be in that specific booth. His jaw tightened. It was a setup from the beginning. They used Maria to lure me in, then sent her away before the shooting started. Clean, efficient, almost worked. Who are they? He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made the air feel heavy. There are 5 families in New York. 5 organizations that control everything from the docs to the politicians. My family, the Salvatores, we're the oldest, the strongest, which means we have the most enemies. He turned those dark eyes back to me. Someone wants my territory, my connections, my power. They're willing to start a war to get it, and I'm caught in the middle. Yes. Because you passed me that warning, because you stepped between me and a bullet, even if you didn't mean to. He leaned forward, his presence overwhelming. The question is, why? Why did you help me, Sophia? You didn't know who I was. You owed me nothing. You could have walked away. I didn't have a good answer. Maria was scared, and you were going to die. I couldn't just let that happen. Couldn't or wouldn't. Does it matter? It matters very much. His hand reached across the table, and I froze as his fingers traced the edge of my bandage with surprising gentleness. Because conscience is a luxury in my world. People who act on conscience don't survive long, but people who act on conscience are also the rarest thing in my life. Something I can't buy, can't threaten, can't break. His touch burned through the gauze. I should have pulled away. should have been terrified, but there was something hypnotic in his focus, something that made me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced. Not as invisible waitress Sophia, as something more. "What happens now?" I whispered. "Now, I find out who betrayed me. I make an example that will ensure no one tries again. And I decide what to do with you. You keep saying that. Decide what to do with me. Like I'm a problem to solve. You are." He pulled his hand back, and I felt the absence like cold water. "You're a civilian who witnessed an assassination attempt. You're a liability that my enemies could exploit. But you're also—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "You're someone who saved my life. In my culture, that creates a debt, a bond. You're under my protection now, whether you want to be or not. And if I refuse, if I want to go back to my life, you can't." He said it with finality. "Your life ended last night, Sophia. The moment you touched that napkin. Now you have two choices: stay under my protection and live, or leave and die within 48 hours. I'll be honest about those odds because despite what you might think, I don't enjoy forcing people into cages." The breakfast turned to ash in my mouth. "So I'm a prisoner. You're protected. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed, going cold, lethal, dangerous. "We're done here. Paolo will take you back to your room." He stood, buttoning his cuffs with precise movements. "I have business to attend to."
"Don't leave the penthouse level. Don't try to contact anyone outside." "And Sophia?" He paused at the terrace door. "When I come back tonight, we'll discuss your future. I suggest you think very carefully about what you want that future to look like." Then he was gone, leaving me alone with cold coffee and the weight of impossible choices. The guard, Paolo, appeared at my elbow. "Miss Chen." I followed him back through the labyrinth of hallways, my mind racing. Think about my future. What future was there in a cage, no matter how gilded? What life could I possibly have in the shadow of a man who dealt in violence and blood? But then I thought of my mother, safe in her premium care facility. Thought of my student loans, suddenly meaningless. Thought of how, for the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about money or bills or keeping my head above water through sheer force of will. Thought of the way Dante had looked at me. Like I mattered. Like I was real. Paolo opened the door to my room and I stepped inside. The lock engaged behind me with that same soft click. I walked to the windows and pressed my forehead against the glass. Down below, the city moved on. Oblivious, people going to work, to lunch, to lives that made sense. And up here, I was suspended in amber. Trapped but protected, prisoner but cared for. The phone on the nightstand rang. I picked it up with shaking hands. "Hello, Miss Chen. You have a visitor." The receptionist's voice. "A Maria Delgado is asking to see you. Should I send her up?" Maria. The woman who'd started all this. The woman who'd known about the trap and had run rather than face it. The woman whose warning had saved Dante's life. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to stay safe in my cage. But I needed answers. Needed to understand what I'd stumbled into. "Send her up." I hung up and waited, my heart hammering against my ribs. 5 minutes later, the door opened, and Maria stepped inside. She looked worse than I'd ever seen her. Hair unwashed, clothes rumpled, eyes red from crying or lack of sleep or both. When she saw me, relief and terror warred on her face. "Sophia. Oh God, Sophia, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." She crossed the room and grabbed my hands, heedless of the bandages. "I never meant for you to get hurt. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be there when it happened." "When what happened, Maria?" I pulled my hands free. "When Dante Salvatore almost got killed. When people died in the restaurant. What the hell did you get me into?" She sank onto the bed, her face crumpling. "They threatened my daughter. Said if I didn't help them, they'd hurt Rosa. She's only 9, Sophia. What was I supposed to do?" Horror washed over me. "Who threatened her?" "I don't know their names. Just men, dangerous men. They came to my apartment 2 weeks ago. Showed me pictures of Rosa at school, at the playground.
Said all I had to do was write a message and leave it for Salvatore, that he'd see it, he'd know what it meant, and everything would be over. Her voice broke. They said no one would get hurt, that it was just business. Maria, who were they working for? I don't know. They didn't say, and I was too scared to ask. I just did what they told me and ran. I thought you'd serve him. He'd read the message, and that would be the end of it. I never thought. She looked at my bandaged hands, at the expensive room around us. What happened? The news said there was a shooting, but nothing else. And when I called the restaurant this morning, Castellano said you'd quit, but I knew that wasn't true. I told her. Watching her face go progressively paler as I described the assassination attempt, the guards, Dante's reaction. When I finished, she was shaking. You're with him now. Under his protection. More like under his control. No, Sophia, you don't understand. She gripped my arm. If Dante Salvatore is keeping you here, it means he values you. Maybe he even... She stopped, seeming to reconsider. You need to be smart about this. Men like him, they don't keep people around unless they serve a purpose. Figure out what purpose you serve. Make yourself indispensable. I don't want to be indispensable to a mafia boss, Maria. I want my life back. Your life is gone. She said it with the same finality Dante had. The moment you got involved, it was over. Now you survive however you can. She stood, smoothing down her clothes. I have to go. I just needed to see you, to make sure you were okay, and to warn you. Warn me about what? The men who came to me. They're not done. They'll try again. And next time, they'll be smarter about it. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. When they gave me the message to write, they called him the king. I said he'd been ruling too long, that it was time for the throne to change hands. The king. The words echoed in my mind long after Maria left, long after the door locked behind her again, long after the sun began to set over the city skyline. Dante Salvatore wasn't just a mafia boss. He was something more, something bigger. A king in a kingdom of shadows. And somehow, impossibly, I'd become his most valuable piece on a board I couldn't even see. Dante returned at midnight. I'd spent the day pacing my gilded cage, my mind spinning through everything Maria had told me. Men threatening her daughter, a message about a king, a throne changing hands. Every answer spawned 10 more questions, and the silence of the penthouse pressed against me like a physical weight. When the door opened, I spun around, my heart jumping into my throat. He stood in the doorway, and for a moment, I barely recognized him. Blood spattered his white shirt, not his own, I realized with sick certainty. His knuckles were split and bruised. There was a coldness in his eyes that hadn't been there this morning, something dark and ancient and utterly merciless. This was the real Dante Salvatore. Not the man who'd shared breakfast with me. Not the one who'd spoken about conscience and debt. This was the king Maria had mentioned. The one who ruled through fear and violence and absolute power. Did I wake you? His voice was rough, tired. I couldn't sleep. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly conscious of the thin silk pajamas I wore. What happened? Justice. He moved into the room, and I caught the scent of gunpowder mixed with expensive cologne. Castellano won't be betraying anyone again. Neither will the 3 men who paid him to arrange my death. My stomach turned. You killed them. Did you expect mercy? He pulled off his ruined shirt with methodical movements, revealing a torso marked with scars. Some old and faded, others newer. A particularly vicious one ran from his collarbone to his ribs, white against tan skin. In my world, betrayal has only one punishment. I would have thought a philosophy major would understand that. Machiavelli, Hobbes, the nature of power and survival. Those are just theories, abstract concepts. This is... I gestured at the blood, at him, at everything. This is murder. This is survival. He moved to the bathroom, and I heard water running. Come here. It wasn't a request. I shouldn't have obeyed. Should have stayed rooted to my spot, maintained whatever small amount of autonomy I had left. But my feet carried me forward anyway, drawn by something I didn't want to examine too closely. He stood at the sink, washing blood from his hands with methodical precision. The water ran pink, then red, then clear. I watched, mesmerized and horrified in equal measure. Maria came to see me today, I said, needing to break the silence. She told me about her daughter, about the men who threatened her. Dante's hands stilled. And? She said they called you the king. Said it was time for the throne to change hands. I met his eyes in the mirror. What does that mean? He dried his hands on a towel, then turned to face me. We were too close in the small bathroom, his presence overwhelming. It means someone has decided they want what I have. My territory, my influence, my power. They're willing to use innocent people, waitresses, children, to get it. Who? I have suspicions. The Kozlov brothers are the obvious candidates. They've been pushing at my borders for months, but this feels more calculated than their usual brutality. He reached out, and I flinched before I could stop myself. Something flickered in his eyes, hurt, maybe, or disappointment. But he only brushed a strand of hair from my face with surprising gentleness. You're afraid of me. Shouldn't I be? Yes. His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I hated how my body responded to his touch. How warmth spread through me despite everything. I'm a monster, Sophia. I've done things that would give you nightmares. I've killed, tortured, destroyed lives without hesitation. But I'm also the only thing standing between you and the kind of men who would do worse than kill you. Why do you care? The question burst out before I could stop it. Why am I here? Why not just let me go? Pay me off. Give me a new identity. Send me somewhere far away, because you saved my life. He said it with that same certainty, that absolute conviction. And because when I look at you, I see something I haven't seen in 20 years. Someone real. Someone who acted out of conscience instead of calculation. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? His other hand came up to cup my face, both palms warm against my cheeks. I should have pulled away, should have been terrified, but there was something in his touch that felt almost reverent. Like I was something precious he was afraid of breaking. I've been searching for something my entire life, he continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Something that wasn't just another transaction, another alliance, another piece on the board. And then you appeared, in your worn sneakers and cheap uniform, and you risked everything for a stranger. How am I supposed to let that go? This isn't... You can't keep me like a pet, Dante. I'm a person. I have a life. You have the life I give you. The gentleness vanished, replaced by that cold certainty. Your apartment has been emptied. Your belongings are in storage. Your jobs have been informed you've left the city for a family emergency. As far as the world is concerned, Sophia Chen has disappeared. Horror crashed over me. You had no right. I had every right. His hands dropped from my face, and he stepped back, putting distance between us. Someone tried to kill me using you as an unwitting pawn. That means you're in danger every second you're not under my protection. So yes, I eliminated your old life. Because your old life was going to get you killed. You should have asked me, given me a choice. Would you have made the smart one? He crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe. Would you have agreed to disappear, to let me protect you? Or would you have insisted on going back to your studio apartment with the broken lock and your bookstore job where anyone could find you? I wanted to argue. Wanted to say I would have been smart, would have understood the danger, but he was right. And we both knew it. I would have run. Would have tried to reclaim my small, safe, manageable life. What do you want from me? I asked again, desperate for an answer that made sense. What's my purpose here? Maria said I needed to make myself indispensable. What does that even mean? Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Come with me. There's something I want to show you. He led me through the penthouse to a room I hadn't seen before. It required 3 different security measures to open: fingerprint, retinal scan, and a code he entered on a keypad. The door swung open on silent hinges, revealing what looked like a combination of office and war room. Maps covered one wall, marked with colored pins and notations in multiple languages. Computer screens showed security feeds from what looked like dozens of locations across the city. A conference table dominated the center, covered in files and photographs. This is my empire, Dante said, gesturing to the maps. Every pin represents a business, a connection, a piece of territory. Red for the Salvatores, my family. Blue for the Koslov brothers. Green for the Chen syndicate, no relation to you before you ask. Yellow for the Benedetti family. Purple for the Volkov organization. He moved to stand beside me, his presence warm at my back. 5 families, constantly shifting, constantly competing. The balance of power has held for 15 years because I've been strong enough to maintain it, and now someone wants to tip the scales. Exactly. He pulled a file from the table and opened it, showing me photographs of 3 men I didn't recognize. These are the people I killed tonight. Low-level enforcers working for someone higher up the chain. Before they died, they confirmed what I suspected. This isn't just about territory. It's personal. Personal how? He hesitated, and for the first time, I saw uncertainty cross his face. My father built this empire, made the Salvatore name mean something. When he died 10 years ago, there were those who thought I was too young, too American, too soft to hold what he'd built. I proved them wrong. His jaw tightened. But there's one person who's never forgiven me for taking what they thought should be theirs. My uncle, Antonio Salvatore. The name hung in the air like poison. He's been in Sicily for the past decade, supposedly retired. But 6 months ago, he started reaching out to the other families, making promises, offering deals. He wants what I have, and he's willing to start a war to get it. Dante turned to face me, his expression grim. The men who came for me at Luminara, they had tattoos, small, easy to miss. But I saw them, Antonio's mark. So your own family is trying to kill you. Family is complicated in my world. He moved closer, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Power does. Fear does. And sometimes, his hand came up to trace the line of my jaw. Sometimes protection does. I still don't understand what this has to do with me. Don't you? His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and I stopped breathing. You're the girl who saved my life. The one person in this entire city who acted without calculation or agenda. In 3 days, I'm meeting with the heads of the other families. A summit to discuss Antonio's provocations and prevent all-out war. They'll be watching me, looking for weakness, waiting to see if I'm still strong enough to hold my position. His hand dropped to my throat, not squeezing, just resting there, a collar of flesh and warmth. I need them to see that I'm not just strong, that I'm ruthless enough to keep what's mine, possessive enough to go to war over what I value. And you, Sophia Chen, he leaned in until his lips brushed my ear. You're going to help me show them that. My heart hammered against his palm. How? By standing beside me, by being mine in the eyes of every person who matters in this world, by becoming so important to me that threatening you would be a declaration of war. I should have been terrified, should have pushed him away, should have screamed that I wasn't his prop, wasn't his possession. But there was something in his voice, a vulnerability beneath the command, that made me pause. Why me? I whispered. You could have anyone. Women who understand your world, who know how to play these games. Why the waitress with student loans and philosophy books? Because you're real. He pulled back just enough to look at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my breath catch. Everyone in my life wants something. Power, money, protection, status. They smile and bow and pretend loyalty while calculating how to use me. But you? His hand moved from my throat to cup my face again. You looked at me and saw a man about to die. Nothing more, nothing less. No calculation. Just conscience. That doesn't mean I want this. Want to be part of your world. No, it doesn't. He released me, stepping back. Which is why I'm giving you a choice. The only real choice you're going to get. In 3 days, you come with me to the summit. You stand beside me and play the role of the woman I'm protecting, the woman I value. You help me show strength, and in return, I keep you safe. I keep your mother safe. I give you a life without fear or debt or struggle. And if I refuse, then I'll still keep you here, still keep you safe. But you'll be a prisoner instead of a partner, a liability instead of an asset. And when this war is over, if I survive it, I'll give you money and a new identity and send you somewhere far away. Alone. The choice was impossible. Stay a prisoner or become complicit in his world. Safety or autonomy. Protection or freedom. But as I looked at him, at the scars marking his body, the blood he'd washed from his hands, the absolute certainty in his eyes, I realized something that terrified me more than anything else. Part of me wanted to say yes. Part of me wanted to step into his world, to stand beside him, to be the thing he valued most. Because in my entire life, no one had ever looked at me the way Dante Salvatore did, like I mattered, like I was essential, like losing me would break something fundamental inside him. It was insane. Stockholm Syndrome, probably. A trauma response to being kidnapped and caged and forced into proximity with a dangerous man. But it felt real. I need time to think, I managed. You have until the summit. 3 days. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Sophia. Tonight, when I was extracting information from the men who betrayed me, one of them said something interesting. He said Antonio specifically wanted you alive, that you were worth more alive than dead. Ice flooded my veins. What does that mean? I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. His eyes held mine, dark and intense, which means you don't leave this penthouse. You don't go near windows. You don't talk to anyone I haven't personally vetted. Because whatever game Antonio is playing, you've become a piece on his board too, and I won't lose you to him. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it sent heat curling through my stomach. He left, and I stood alone in his war room, surrounded by maps of an empire I didn't understand, caught between a king and a would-be usurper in a game where the rules made no sense. 3 days. 3 days to decide if I wanted to be a princess in this dark kingdom or remain a prisoner waiting for escape. 3 days to figure out why Antonio Salvatore wanted me alive. 3 days until everything changed. I looked at the maps, at the red pins marking Dante's territory, at the photographs of dangerous men and shifting alliances, and I thought about the way his hands had trembled slightly when he touched my face, the vulnerability beneath the violence, the man beneath the monster. Maybe Maria was right. Maybe the only way to survive was to make myself indispensable. Or maybe I was already falling into a trap far more dangerous than the one at Luminara. A trap baited with protection and possessiveness, and a man who looked at me like I was worth going to war over. The 3 days passed in a strange dream state of luxury and tension. Dante was gone most of the time, handling what he called preparations for the summit. But when he returned, always late at night, sometimes with blood on his clothes, sometimes merely exhausted, he would find me, sometimes in the war room, where I'd begun studying his maps and files, trying to understand the world I'd fallen into. Sometimes in the library, where I'd discovered a surprising collection of philosophy texts, alongside books on military strategy and Sicilian history. Once, he found me on the terrace at dawn, watching the city wake up, and simply stood beside me in silence until the sun fully rose. We didn't talk about my decision, didn't discuss the summit or what he expected from me, but the tension between us grew with each passing hour, thick and electric, like a storm building on the horizon. On the second night, he taught me to shoot. "If you're going to be in my world," he'd said, leading me to a private range in the building's sublevels, "you need to know how to protect yourself." The gun had felt heavy and wrong in my bandaged hands, but Dante had stood behind me, his body pressed against mine, his hands guiding my grip, his breath warm against my ear as he murmured instructions. And when I'd finally hit the target, a clean shot through the center, the pride in his eyes had made something in my chest tighten dangerously. On the third morning, a woman arrived with enough designer clothes to fill 3 closets. "For tonight," Dante explained, watching as I stared at gowns that probably cost more than a year of my old salary. "You'll need to look the part." "And what part is that?" I'd asked, running my fingers over silk and velvet and fabrics I couldn't even name. "Mine." He'd said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Now, as the sun set on the third day, I stood in front of a full-length mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. The stylist had transformed me. My hair fell in loose waves over bare shoulders. Makeup emphasized my eyes, made my lips look fuller, gave my skin a glow I'd never achieved on my own. And the dress. God, the dress. Midnight blue silk that hugged every curve before falling to the floor in a cascade of fabric, a slit up one thigh. A neckline that was modest, but somehow made me look dangerous. Elegant. Expensive. Like I belonged in Dante Salvatore's world. "You look beautiful." I turned to find him in the doorway, and my breath caught. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin, perfectly tailored to emphasize broad shoulders and a trim waist. His hair was styled back, revealing the sharp angles of his face, but it was his eyes that held me, dark and intense, and full of something that made my pulse race. "I look like someone I'm not," I said quietly. "No." He crossed the room, each step measured and predatory. "You look like who you've always been underneath the armor of invisibility. This is just you without the disguise." He stopped in front of me, and I could smell his cologne, something dark and spicy that made me want to lean closer. His hand came up, and I held still as he fastened a necklace around my throat, diamonds and sapphires that felt cold against my skin. "These belong to my mother," he murmured, his fingers lingering at my nape. "She wore them to every important family gathering. My father gave them to her on their wedding day." I touched the stones with trembling fingers. "Dante, I can't." "You can. You will." He moved to face me, his hands settling on my waist. "Tonight, everyone who matters in this city will see you wearing my mother's jewels. They'll understand what that means, that you're under my protection, that you're—" He paused, seeming to struggle with the words, "that you're important to me. Have you decided?" The question came out barely above a whisper. "Am I your partner or your prisoner? I think you decided days ago, Sophia. You've been studying my maps, learning my world. You could have spent these 3 days fighting me, hating me, planning your escape. Instead, you've been preparing to stand beside me." His thumb traced circles on my hip through the silk. "So, I'll ask you one more time. Will you come with me tonight? Will you be mine in the eyes of every dangerous man in New York?" This was it. The moment of choice. The point where I either stepped fully into his world or clung to the remnants of my old life. I thought about my studio apartment with its broken lock, my 2 jobs that barely kept me afloat, the constant fear of my mother's bills, the weight of debt, the exhaustion of trying to survive, that life had been safe in its smallness, manageable in its misery, but it had also been invisible, meaningless. A slow drowning that I'd convinced myself was swimming, and Dante, dangerous, violent, possessive Dante, made me feel alive, made me feel seen, made me feel like I mattered for the first time in my entire adult life. Yes. The word escaped before I could second-guess it. "I'll stand beside you tonight." Something fierce and triumphant blazed in his eyes. He pulled me closer, one hand moving to cup the back of my neck, the other splaying possessively across my lower back. "You're sure? Because once we walk through those doors together, there's no going back. You'll be marked as mine. Every enemy I have will see you as a target. Every ally will know that hurting you means war, I'm sure." And I was. Terrifyingly, inexplicably sure. He kissed me then, fierce and claiming and desperate. His lips moved against mine like he was trying to consume me, to mark me as his from the inside out. I kissed him back with equal intensity, my hands fisting in his perfect jacket, pulling him closer even though we were already pressed together. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "We need to go," he said roughly, "or we won't leave this room at all tonight." The car ride to the summit was tense and silent. Dante held my hand the entire time, his thumb stroking over my knuckles in a gesture that might have been soothing or possessive or both. The diamonds at my throat caught every streetlight, throwing rainbow prisms across the interior. "What should I expect tonight?" I finally asked as we pulled up to a building in Tribeca, nondescript from the outside, but flanked by too many expensive cars and too many men in suits to be anything innocent. The 5 families will be represented. Each will have brought their inner circle, advisors, enforcers, trusted allies. There will be posturing and threats disguised as pleasantries. Everyone will be armed, even though the rules say they shouldn't be. He turned to face me, his expression grave. Stay close to me. Don't drink anything I haven't tasted first. Don't go anywhere alone. And if something goes wrong, if shooting starts or someone tries to grab you, you run. There's an exit in the back, marked with a red light. My men will be waiting to get you to safety. What about you? I can take care of myself. He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. But you, Sophia, you're my weakness now, the thing that could be used against me. Which is why I need you to promise me that if things go bad, you'll save yourself, even if it means leaving me behind. I won't. Promise me. His grip tightened. I can face any enemy, survive any war, but I can't do that if I'm worried about you. So promise me you'll run if you have to. I swallowed hard and nodded. I promise. Good. He released my hand and stepped out of the car, then offered his hand to help me out. The moment my heels touched the pavement, I felt eyes on us. Men in dark suits watching from doorways and shadows. Assessment and calculation in every gaze. Dante's hand settled possessively on my lower back as he guided me toward the entrance. We moved through security, searches and metal detectors that found the gun I knew Dante carried anyway, and into an elevator that descended rather than rose. Underground, he murmured. Neutral territory. No windows, limited exits. Nowhere to run if things go wrong. The elevator doors opened onto a space that stole my breath. It looked like something from a movie, a vast underground ballroom with vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and enough marble and gold to furnish a palace. Tables laden with food and expensive liquor lined one wall. A string quartet played in the corner, and everywhere, dangerous men in expensive suits mingled like this was a normal party, rather than a gathering of the city's most powerful criminals. Dante! A booming voice cut through the music. A massive man with a thick Russian accent approached, his arms spread wide. You're late. We were beginning to think you'd gotten cold feet. Victor. Dante's voice was cordial but cool. I'm never late. Everyone else is simply early. The Russian, Viktor Koslov, I realized, one of the brothers Dante had mentioned, laughed like this was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. But his eyes were calculating as they swept over me. And who is this beautiful creature? Mine. Dante's hand tightened on my waist. Sophia Chen, meet Viktor Koslov. He controls the waterfront and thinks that makes him important. Charming as ever, Dante. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. You should teach him some manners, Miss Chen, before someone decides to teach him themselves. The threat hung in the air. Before I could respond, another man approached. Asian, younger than Victor, with a dangerous grace in his movements. Dante Salvatore. Still alive, I see. How disappointing for some of us. His eyes flicked to me, and something like recognition crossed his face. Chen? You said? Any relation to the Chen Syndicate? None. Dante answered before I could. She's civilian. Under my protection. Civilian. The word was layered with disbelief. You're bringing civilians to family summits now? You must be more desperate than the rumors suggest. Or more confident. A new voice, smooth and cultured with an Italian accent that reminded me of Dante's but older, more refined. My nephew has always had interesting taste in companions. The room went quiet. Even the quartet stopped playing. Every eye turned toward the man approaching across the marble floor. He looked like Dante might in 30 years. Same dark eyes, same sharp features, but with gray threading through his hair and lines etched deep around his mouth. He wore his tuxedo like armor, and he moved with the absolute confidence of a man who'd never been afraid of anything in his life. Antonio Salvatore. Dante's entire body went rigid beside me. His hand on my waist became almost painful in its grip. Uncle. The word was ice. I didn't realize you'd been invited. I invited myself. Antonio stopped a few feet away, his eyes moving between Dante and me with predatory interest. After all, this summit concerns me as much as anyone. Wouldn't you agree? This summit is for the heads of the 5 families. You retired 10 years ago. You have no voice here. I have every voice here. Antonio gestured around the room, and I realized with sinking horror that too many men were nodding along with him. I built half the alliances in this room while you were still playing with toy guns. These men respect me. Trust me. And they've seen how you've been losing your grip. Bringing civilians to sacred meetings. Letting emotions cloud your judgment. His eyes locked on mine, and I felt pinned like a butterfly to a board. Especially this civilian. Tell me, Miss Chen, do you know why you're really here? What you really mean in this little game we're playing? Don't, Dante growled. She has nothing to do with this, doesn't she? Antonio smiled, and it was the cruelest expression I'd ever seen. Did my nephew tell you about your father, Miss Chen? About the man whose name isn't on your birth certificate? My blood turned to ice. What? No? Antonio tisked. How careless of him. You see, 27 years ago, a man named James Chen worked for my brother, Dante's father. He was a trusted accountant, handled all the family finances. But James got greedy, stole $2 million and disappeared. We searched for years, never found him. We assumed he'd fled the country. I don't understand, I whispered. My mother never mentioned, because she didn't know. Antonio's smile widened. James Chen took a new name, started a new life, fathered a daughter. And then, 10 years ago, he made the mistake of trying to steal from us again. Dante's father found him, had him killed, left his common-law wife and daughter to fend for themselves. The world tilted. My father, the man I'd never known, the blank space on my birth certificate, had been killed by Dante's family. Everything I'd suffered, every struggle, every moment of poverty and fear, it all led back to this world, to these men. You're lying, I said, but my voice shook. Am I? Ask your mother. Ask her about James, about how he'd disappear for weeks at a time, about the money that would appear and then vanish, about how everything changed 10 years ago when he didn't come home. Antonio turned to Dante. Did you know, nephew, when you brought her here, when you decided to make her yours, did you know who she was? The silence was deafening. I looked at Dante, needing him to deny it, to tell me this was all lies, manipulation, Antonio's attempt to drive a wedge between us. But the guilt in his eyes told me everything. You knew. The words ripped out of me. You knew who I was. What your family did to mine, and you still... It wasn't like that, Dante started, reaching for me. I jerked away from his touch. Then what was it like? You saved my life? Protected me? Or did you just see a convenient pawn, the daughter of a man your father killed? Perfect for what? Revenge? Amusement? I didn't know at first, he said urgently. Not when you passed me the napkin, not when I brought you here, but when I had you investigated, when I learned your mother's maiden name. Your past. Yes, I realized. And I should have told you, but you didn't. Because I was more useful, ignorant. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of all these dangerous men watching our drama unfold like entertainment. This is touching, Antonio said. But we have business to discuss. The matter of leadership. Of whether Dante Salvatore is fit to hold his position, or whether it's time for someone with experience and wisdom to take control. You mean you. Dante's voice was lethal. You want to use her as evidence that I'm weak, that I'm compromised, that I put a woman, a civilian, the daughter of a traitor, above the family's interests. I want what's best for the family, what's best for all of us. Antonio looked around the room. Dante has lost his way. He's let emotion cloud his judgment. He's brought shame to the Salvatore name by elevating this girl to a position of importance. It's time for stronger leadership, traditional leadership. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Too many men nodding. Too many eyes looking at Dante with calculation rather than respect. He was losing. Right here, right now, I could see his empire crumbling because of me, because he'd chosen to protect me, to value me, to make me important, because I'd been stupid enough to believe a monster could be anything else. I'll leave. The words burst out before I could think them through. I'll walk out right now, go back to my old life, forget everything I've seen or heard. You win, Antonio. I'm not worth starting a war over. Sophia, Dante grabbed my arm. Let me go. I wrenched free, my voice breaking. You lied to me, used me, just like everyone else in this goddamn world. So let me go, and you can have your empire back. I turned toward the exit, my vision blurring with tears. Behind me, I heard Antonio laugh, triumphant and cruel. There, you see, even she knows she doesn't belong. Even she. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. I spun around in time to see Antonio stagger, blood blooming across his white shirt. Dante stood with his gun raised, his face absolutely cold. Anyone else think I'm weak? His voice cut through the shocked silence. Anyone else think I've lost control? Because I'm happy to demonstrate exactly how strong I am, how ruthless, how willing I am to go to war over what's mine. He lowered the gun slightly, and his eyes found mine across the distance. You asked me what you meant to me, Sophia. You asked if you were a pawn or a possession. The truth is you're neither. You're the first real thing I've touched in 20 years. The first person who looked at me and saw a man instead of a monster or a meal ticket. And yes, I knew who you were. Knew what my family did to yours. And I kept you anyway, not because of who your father was, but in spite of it. Because you're worth more than any of this. He gestured at the room, at the empire, at everything. Worth more than territory or power, or the respect of men who'd sell their souls for a taste of what I have. He turned back to Antonio, who was being held up by two of his men, blood soaking through his shirt, but the wound clearly not fatal. A deliberate choice. You wanted to know if I'm fit to lead? I just shot my own uncle in front of every family in New York for daring to threaten what's mine. I'd burn this entire city to the ground before I let anyone take her from me. Does that answer your question? The room was silent. Then, slowly, Viktor Kozlov began to clap. Well? The Russian's voice was filled with grudging respect. That's leadership. Brutal, insane, but effective. He looked around at the other family heads. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm not interested in going to war with a man who'll shoot his own blood over a woman. That's the kind of crazy that gets everyone killed. One by one, the other heads nodded their agreement. Antonio's coup had failed before it even began. No one wanted to face a man who'd just demonstrated he valued one person over everything, including family, tradition, and his own safety. Dante's guards moved in, dragging Antonio toward the exit. As they passed me, Antonio locked eyes with me one last time. You've doomed him, he hissed. Love is weakness. It will destroy him. Then he was gone, and I was left standing in a room full of dangerous men who were all looking at me like I was either the luckiest or most cursed woman alive. Dante crossed the distance between us in 3 long strides. He holstered his gun and took my face in both hands, forcing me to look at him. I should have told you about your father. About what my family did. That was wrong, and I'm sorry. But everything else, everything I said about valuing you, protecting you, wanting you beside me, that was real. That is real. His thumb brushed away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. So I'm asking you one final time, Sophia Chen. Will you stay? Will you be mine, knowing everything you know now, or do you want me to let you go? I should have walked away. Should have chosen freedom over this dark, violent world. Should have protected myself from a man who'd just shot his uncle and called it love. But as I looked into Dante's eyes, at the vulnerability beneath the violence, the desperate need for something real in a world of calculated moves, I realized something that changed everything. I'd already made my choice the moment I passed him that napkin. The moment I stepped between him and danger. The moment I agreed to stand beside him tonight. I'd chosen him. Over safety, over peace, over everything. I'll stay. The words came out stronger than I expected. Not because you're protecting me, or because of my mother, or because I'm afraid. I'll stay because when I look at you, I see something real too. Something worth the danger. His relief was palpable. He kissed me then, soft and reverent, and full of promises that probably included bloodshed and chaos, and a life I'd never imagined. When we finally pulled apart, the room had cleared, except for Dante's personal guards. The summit was over. Dante had won. And I had become exactly what Maria had warned me about, indispensable to a king. What happens now? I asked. Now? Dante's smile was dangerous and beautiful. Now we go home. Now you officially become mine in every way that matters. Now we build something real in a world of shadows. His hand found mine, linking our fingers together. And if anyone tries to take you from me, I'll show them exactly what kind of monster I can be. We walked out of that underground ballroom hand in hand, the Mafia king and the waitress who'd saved his life. Behind us, we left blood and broken alliances and the wreckage of Antonio's ambitions. Ahead of us lay a future I couldn't predict, danger and luxury, violence and passion. A life that existed in the spaces between light and shadow. But as Dante helped me into the car, his hand possessive on my waist, his eyes full of dark promises, I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead felt like coming home. I'd walked into a trap meant for a mafia boss, and somehow, impossibly, I'd become the thing he couldn't bear to lose. His queen, in a kingdom of shadows, his weakness and his strength, his... The car pulled away from the curb, carrying us toward whatever came next. Through the tinted windows, I watched the city lights blur into streaks of gold and white. A world I'd once moved through invisibly, now changed forever. Dante's hand found mine in the darkness, his fingers threading through mine with surprising gentleness. "No regrets?" he murmured. I thought about my old life, the struggle, the invisibility, the slow drowning. Then I looked at the man beside me, dangerous, violent, possessive, but also somehow the first person who'd ever truly seen me. "No regrets," I whispered back, and I meant it.